thank you again for being with us today. The one word that comes to mind, I was sharing with someone before, is just gratitude. Extremely, extremely grateful that all of you have taken the time to be here with us today. And there's one final panel left, our final keynote closing session, and it's my true honor and pleasure to be introducing them. It's going to be a compelling discussion and take you on a deep dive into social policy, education, finance, AI, technology, and social media. This panel is going to provide valuable insights into how to break cycles that lead to certain conditions in the Latino community. Discover the challenges and opportunities facing the Latino community and how together we can develop leaders that will work together to break cycles. I'm going to introduce them one at a time. So I'm going to call on stage first, CEO and founder of Latino Wall St, Gabriela Berrospi, up to the stage. We can put some music. Yes.
Gaby migrated to the United States on a scholarship to NYU. She went through a very difficult time as a young lady. Her father lost a lot of their possessions, but she came to NYU to pursue a career in investing and in business. So tell us a little bit about that journey and how the experience as a child shaped you as a woman and as an entrepreneur and as a leader in the Latino community, which today you have enrolled over 10,000 people into Latino Wall St.
Yes, thank you so much, Peter, for that introduction. So I'm the CEO of Latino Wall St. I'm also in the Forbes Finance Council. And sometimes people see my accomplishments and what I created from scratch, and they don't know what happened before, right? What I had to overcome. So I want to start sharing this with you because it's not about me, it's really about you tonight, what I have to share, that it's really going to open up a lot. And that's my goal for the evening, right? So for you to leave with like some new ideas. How many of you here are ashamed of something that happened in your past? I would like to see a raise of hands. Something happened in your past and you're ashamed of it? Okay, and the rest of you had perfect pasts, right? Nothing ever happened. Okay, so most of us, most humans, carry some shame about something that happened in our past. And for me, that was my family's bankruptcy, right? We lost absolutely everything. And what's funny is that what you think disqualifies you to reach your goals, it's exactly what qualifies you. So for a long time, I didn't want to share that with anyone. I thought we were somehow like dysfunctional because that happened to us. And then I realized it was the lack of financial education that made my parents not diversify what they had, not prepare for recessions, for economic turndowns. And I really got that if they had the tools, this wouldn't have happened. Now, of course, I didn't realize that at a very young age because I didn't have that mindset when I was little. All I knew was that something was wrong. Something happened, they lost everything, and I knew there was something, there had to be an answer, right? There had to be a reason. And I went on this journey to discover that. I ended up at NYU because they gave me a scholarship. NYU was, was a very expensive school. Actually, it was not a full scholarship, so we had to take out student loans and whatnot to be able to actually afford going to that school. But what's funny is that school showed me that it opened up my world because it was steps away from Wall Street. So my friends, my circle became Wall Street people, very young, right? Young traders, 22-year-olds, 23-year-olds, and as an 18-year-old, I realized, wow, it's possible to have a lot of money. It's possible for your money to do something for you instead of you having to work for money. So that was a turning point in my life, but I guess the point I want to make here is that whatever you're ashamed of, that you went through, whether that's a bankruptcy, a health issue, a divorce, whatever it is, that's exactly what qualifies you to reach your goals because that's what allows me to connect with the Latino community. I can relate to them. That part of my story is what's authentic, what's raw, what's real, and that's why Latino Wall St grew so much so quickly to thousands of members because they also wanted to empower themselves and they got what's the consequence of not having financial education, but they also got that you don't need to be scared because of your past. It doesn't define your future.
Thank you, Gaby. Poverty, illiteracy, and dysfunction are the common thread of our community, the Latino community. How do we build those mindsets? But more importantly, what happens, Selena, in Gaby's mindset and her parents' mindset that shifted the paradigm of where she ended and who she is today?
As part of what Peter and I have very much been trying to do with Latin Talks is find stories like this. And so when we first heard Gaby's story, for me, a couple things immediately jumped out at me. So the story actually goes, when she was 11, she had her reaction was very much, this doesn't make any sense. Like, there's got to be a different way. And it's really easy to see how it could have been, this is so unfair. Like, what's the point? My dad just worked his whole freaking life, and now we're alone in a country where we don't speak the language. He has no job. We're all suffering. That could have been kind of her driving force. And I'm sure she felt those things too, but you can tell by the way that she proceeded and the momentum that she had that the belief that was dominant there was very much, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to figure this out. And that to us is really interesting, because when you think about everything in your life, it is in everything that you do, like it or not, it's based on some agreement that we probably made. She remembers this, sounded like it was very conscious, but that we probably made before we even had the cognitive ability to reconcile cause and effect. So, that was a very distinct piece of it. And then another thing that's really interesting is that when she then went to NYU, her identity was not based on who she was, actually. And it certainly wasn't based on who she was before, but even in that moment, she didn't identify with the kids in the dorms, ordering Papa John's like I did, when I was in college. She identified with the kids that were 21 years old and killing it on Wall Street. And so that's what her driving force once again was. And, part of what with Latin Talks and with all of these incredible events that give us inspiration is that they are the ability to realize that you don't have to let your past dictate who you are, and in fact, you should find an identity, even if it doesn't seem, it seems outside of you, that you can then use that as your driving force to decide how you act, what you do, and where you want to go.
Yeah. And it's key to surround yourself with people that show you what's possible, right? Because I always say proximity is power. If I didn't surround myself with people who were winning and just like killing it, I wouldn't have known that was possible for me at a young age. I knew that if you were much older and had decades of experience, you could make money. I knew that, but I didn't know that as a young kid, you could start making a ton of money by learning all these different strategies, tools, and business and projects and trading and investments. Like, I had no idea that city, that school exposed me to everything. But very interesting, because it was not about what my school taught me. Ironically, it was not about the traditional system. It was about going outside of it, right? Going around it, which is key, because you never want to just stay with like how the system works. You want to be a little bit disruptive and explore outside of it. Just like thinking outside the box is key for entrepreneurs and business people.
And let's talk about a little bit about that some more, because as the fastest growing, Latinos being the fastest growing population in the US, projected that by 2060, 1 out of 4 citizens will be a Latino. What tools and resources are available today besides traditional education that can help Latinos navigate this fast changing world?
Yeah, so that's what we do, right, at Latino Wall Street. We basically educate and empower the Latino community in Spanish, right, to learn about investment, finance, stock market, trading, just whatever it is to push them forward towards their goals financially. That's our goal, that's our mission. That's really what changed my life since a very young age. My parents never had a retirement account. I opened a retirement account by the time I was 19. Why? Because I learned from people who were doing that for a living. And I said, wow, if you just do the math, right? And and you take action, look at what's possible. And I will see the graphs and I would do the math and the percentages. And I think having these resources, these tools, this financial education is key. The world will be different if we all had that at a very young age. Unfortunately, that's not offered, it's not included in our school system, but we're doing a lot to overcome that. So the resources we have are basically courses, seminars, events, anything to educate them about the tools and financial education.
Right, so there is a plethora of information readily available to us, from podcasts to mentoring to ebooks to mastermind master classes. But how do we assure that the bottom of the pyramid, okay, it's not left behind? How do we assure that that the people that don't have access to, or do not know how to utilize that information, technology, AI, social media, that they don't get sucked into the system, and instead of using that as an entertainment tool, they use it as an educational tool?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we encourage, people to, for example, I always say there's no excuse, no matter how little resources you have, there's no excuse to not learn. Even if you don't have internet, right? You can always access a book. And I mean literally a book, not an ebook, right? So that's one of the things that I always share with people, and I talk to kids in schools and different things, right? One of the habits that I've built and I credit pretty much most of my success to is the habit of reading. Anyone can access a book. There's actually a lot of free books you could get in public libraries and whatnot. And that's something I learned since I was very young. And there's tons of information out there where you can study, even if you study the stories of people who had nothing and then went to everything. Nobody did it by working and saving money, nobody. The common denominator was they invested their money, they risked, right? They had to take risks, whether that was a business, whether that was an investment, and that's how you grow, that's how you expand. If you want to stay small, then don't do it, but then that's how you get in trouble later, right? Because then inflation will kill your purchasing power. So I think it's just about creating awareness that you can learn. You don't necessarily need to have even internet. You can use tools that have been around forever. They just haven't been used for these specific reasons.
Selena, in the Hispanic culture, in the Latino culture, there's been a lot of myths that have held us back from moving forward. From calladita te ves más bonita, mijito cuida tu trabajo, keep your head down, don't rock the boat, don't make a lot of noise, don't be noticed. How do we break those cycles? How do we build that confidence that is going to help us thrive in the real world?
Well, I think that's part of what we're trying to do with Latin Talks, because I believe the reality is it's not that people don't know how to go get a book or don't know that they can take an online course. It's just they don't see themselves in those roles. So again, back to the identity thing, it's like cognitive dissonance. Like, why would they go ahead and start to learn this thing if it's so far beyond? They don't, a lot of, and this is again, speaking in generalities, but a lot of people that come to this country, they're trying to figure out how they're going to get the college account for the kids, how they're going to, and that's even a luxury, how they're going to keep a job, how they're going to feed their children. And so they're living in a state of survival often. And when we don't have those bases covered, it's very hard to grow and enrich. And so part of what Peter's vision for Latin Talks has very much been, let's show them that it's possible, bring in not fancy leaders and fancy people with a ton of social media followers, but instead bring in the woman in her town that started a nail salon in her house and now she's making $50,000 a month, and have her be the person that's speaking, not us. Have those people be the people that are telling their stories, how they actually did it from nothing and not from their place that they were about to get evicted and things like that. So it's really kind of bringing it to a level. A lot of the different, if I were to say to you right now, oh, how should you be more present? Everyone says, oh, meditation, this and that. It's taken it 15 steps before that. It's taken it 15 steps to something that they can be actionable about that very day, and then be on that path. Because if it's so far down the road, then what's the point of even starting?
And to elaborate a little bit more on what you are saying is, one of our missions has been to create spaces where the common local leader that has achieved a certain level of success in their local community, and it still becomes very relevant and very, very relatable, is able to identify. We try to marry stories that connect the people with our mission, and see in our leaders, in our speakers, the ability to be able to break those cycles. Now, fear, insecurity, I'm not enough, the imposter syndromes are very common in our communities. Gaby, how did you channel through that? How did you break through that? How did you navigate that?
Yeah, so I realized that something that Latinos have in common, right, is that they have trust issues, because if you just like study our history and our governments, right, our leaders have failed us. For example, in my country, in Peru, most of our presidents are in jail, right? That's a fact. So, you know, you grow up like that, and I include myself, I grew up like that, right? Watching like the number one person in the country that's supposed to lead you and empower you and whatever it is, not do very good things, then you just have this lack of trust ingrained in you. So then when someone comes and it's like, hey, everything is possible, you can learn financial education, you can move forward, you can make a lot of money, you can better your life, they're just like, this person's a scam, you know? So I would say the main obstacle is just breaking through that mindset of like this lack of trust, how I do it, and that's why I couldn't emphasize it more. What you're most ashamed of, that's the story everyone needs to hear. Why? Because, for example, and this is just an example, it's my personal experience, that story of bankruptcy is what makes all of them listen to me. That's how I grew Latino Wall Street to a multi-million-dollar company, by sharing that, right? Because without that, there's nothing that could, they want to feel like the other person speaking to you is also human, that they've also gone through hard things. So another random example, if you were, I don't know, an alcoholic, what helps other people, what gives you all the credibility to help others is exactly that, what you're ashamed of. Because that gives you, you're like a role model, you already got out of it, so now you are the most qualified to help them, right? So I would say how I break through those barriers is just really being open, being authentic, just sharing that most of us don't want to share, because who wants to talk about hard moments in our life? And that's when people are like, wow, this person's real. This person has been through a lot of things, because at the end of the day, who cares about all the credentials and success and the millions of dollars? People really don't care about that. They just want to make sure you're a real person, and what makes you real is your story.
So, you know, as a personal and professional development coach, give us some practical tools, some takeaways that the audience can take when facing certain circumstances like this.
Well, I think what's really empowering for people to understand is kind of how it all works, you know. And so for me, I had a lot of education in a lot of different, you know, traditional ways, and as long as it was just me controlling my path and everything was fine, I could do it. And then something would creep in, and it just felt like it was out of nowhere. Like I didn't, you know, you all of a sudden you'd be really insecure, or you'd get really anxious, and we're taught, we're conditioned to say, okay, I feel really badly right now. What could it be? What could it be? So you look outside of you. You say, okay, well, all these people are looking at me. I wonder if they're even listening. Okay, or you know, I'm here with Peter. Did I forget to give him something? Is he mad at me? So we're just very conditioned to look outside to figure out what it is. And the reality is that most of the emotions that we have come from something that has nothing to do with what is going on in this present moment. And you know, that then becomes for us to be able to decipher, for us to be able to say, okay, here is this wave of emotion that tells me I'm an imposter. It tells me, who does she think she is to be even talking about this? Who does she think she is to be doing some Wall Street thing? You know, what does that even mean? And then it's really being able to bring that in and understand that if it's coming from, you know, lack, shame, doubt, fear, scarcity, then that is a coping mechanism that, again, you picked up somewhere along the way. And in that moment, that coping mechanism is coming in to help you by keeping you safe, by keeping you doing nothing. So fight, flight, freeze. Freeze. Freeze comes in. Just don't do anything. If you don't put yourself out there, nobody can tell you what a loser you are. If you don't put yourself out there again, you won't be able to embarrass yourself. And it's very much just having, almost like being a relentless gatekeeper, where if that thing that is coming in is helping you, if it feels good, if it's moving you forward, then great, we'll keep it for a bit. But if it's not, then it's actually just your nervous system doing its job. It's your brain trying to be efficient. And that's why I'm really passionate about understanding the actual workings of what's happening, because you can intellectualize it, you can know your limiting beliefs until you're blue in the face. But when you get that wave that comes over you, none of that stuff works, because you're relying on your conscious brain to deal with something that is unconscious. And when you're in that state, your conscious brain has left the building. You are now in reptile mode, where your only options are to get out of there or to fight.
Gaby, let's circle back to you. Latina, immigrant, and you enter a space that is male dominated.
Yeah.
Okay, Wall Street. Tell us a little bit about your experience and how you overcame some of those challenges and what some of those challenges were as well.
Yeah, so again, right, going back to my previous point, what do you think is your weakness? You can turn it into your strength, right? And that's very true. So statistically, I'm a numbers person. I saw the statistics and I would say I'm a woman, I'm Latino. If you just see the numbers, statistics, I don't have much of a chance, right, to succeed in the financial industry, because statistically, people like me, women like me, with my background, don't get there. So what happens then? That our brain is trained to look at things the way the system has showed us. But the way I overcome all of it is by being disruptive, right? Okay, fine, I got the statistics, I got all of that, right? I mean, I used to have lunch with my Wall Street friends every day when I was in school in NYU for 4 years, and nobody looked like me, so I was very clear on that. What if I create a Latino Wall Street, right? It's that mentality of thinking outside the box, right? And how I overcame all of it is saying, okay, we had a previous speaker sharing something that I loved, saying, if they don't invite you to the table, make your own. And this is something similar. I was actually, ironically, was invited to the table because I would hang out with his friends, but I wasn't working with them, right? I was just learning from them and applying the things on my own and getting a lot of coaching from people who were extremely successful in Goldman Sachs and all the top firms in Wall Street. And then I realized, what if I don't have to do exactly what they're doing, go through that traditional system, that 9 to 5? What if I just make my own, right? And I did. And of course, it didn't happen overnight, right? I had to prepare a long time for it. I had to specialize in all these different subjects that they weren't teaching me at school. What school wanted was for me to do another degree, do another thing, and I was just trying to be disruptive. I wanted to be different, original, not go through the way that they tell us we have to go through in this order. I just wanted to be different. So that's what happened. I just was a stand for the Latino community. I discovered my passion at such a young age because of what happened to my family. So I was like, I know that I can make a difference. I know I have the tools now that they didn't have. Now I know exactly why that happened. So let me show these people, right, what they could do so that doesn't happen to them. And that's really the way I overcame it, being disruptive, being a stand for the community, and just really getting over the shame that we carry around, something that happened. Really, that's exactly what qualifies you to connect with people.
So since you started your program, Latino Wall Street, you have impacted 10,000 families?
Yeah, we've worked with over 10,000.
And as we often talk about, what connects us, every single one of us, is finances, is money, right?
Yeah.
So financial literacy should be one of the number one key issues that we should be talking about. So tell us a little bit about how we implementing that in the Latino community. How can we introduce it? Because it's also it's a taboo topic, right? Our parents, they want to talk about money.
Yep.
Okay. Money doesn't grow on trees. Okay. There's also some barriers there, some limited mindsets. Okay. Some money blocks. I want you to speak to that, Selena. What are those, and how do we break through those, that we are able to welcome this type of conversations and be able to pursue the financial freedom that really is key. Financial freedom is the key to all other freedoms. Better education, okay? Better health care, better opportunities. So how do we break through those mindsets?
Well, I think the first step is for people to have the awareness that there is a mindset issue there. And it's not just very underprivileged. A lot of people have mindset issues when it comes to money. And for the awareness to be front and forward, because especially if people have kids or if they're influencing people at their jobs or on teams, because that carries through and it permeates. But when people don't even realize it, it's almost like poison that just goes through a system. So, once the awareness is there, these things don't change overnight. You can't say, oh, I'm rich in the mirror 1,000 times and expect to, wake up the next day and have a different point of view. You can, however, start to recognize that, that piece you need to change. But what comes after it? What are the other things? First there's the thought, and then there's the verbalization. And one area that especially when it comes to teams, especially when it comes to an organization, whether it's about money or just complaining in general, it's just committing to not take it to that next level, of verbalizing it, to complaining, to finding other people that have the same exact point of view as you that are going to say, yeah, you're right. It sucks. It's not fair. Your boss is a jerk, or whatever it is. It's ending that right there while you're on your own, trying to figure out a way to create opportunities to prove to yourself that maybe that's not true. Maybe I can have this different. But again, this goes back to the lowest hanging fruit is to stop verbalizing all of the unfairness, the complaining, and then just seeing how that changes the group, changes the behavioral dynamic, and then people can start to actually get evidence that shows them that, maybe it is possible. Maybe the world isn't conspiring against me.
Let's talk about the curriculum that Latino Wall Street offers. Tell us a little bit about that, and tell us what impact you have seen, not only with your students, but beyond that into other generations.
Yeah, so basically our curriculum, we have a basic course, starts at Finance 101 and then go into investments. We're very focused on investing, honestly, to be pretty frank with you, because that's really what's gonna make you grow, right? If you don't take action and you don't do anything with your money, you can just study. This has been proven throughout history, right? Nobody we know that we admire, that's a big name, big family, ever got there by just working and saving. Every single one of them invested. So we want our Latino community to be investors, right? To take risk, but we have something that's called risk management. We don't want to gamble, we don't do that. And a lot of people don't know that something we teach is actually very conservative strategies that most people don't know they exist. I learned it from my Wall Street friends. So there's very conservative strategies that you can just generate income while investing in shares. Right? And a lot of people don't know that. And they're called premiums, right? That you can keep, and you need to understand the terms and conditions of it, but it's basically just parking your money in a company, for example, and then just generating that income until expiration date, so on and so forth. So there's this whole world of ways we can generate income. And I never tell people, now that you're asking about stories, oh, quit your jobs and let's play full out. No. We tell people to be responsible, to use this as a supplement to whatever they do. But we've had stories of people who say, wow, this is amazing. I'm making more money than what I'm making in my 9 to 5, and that they empower themselves and then they move on and they don't have to do the jobs they didn't like to do. Now, if you love what you do, that's amazing. It never hurts to learn how to, grow your money more and whatnot. But our curriculum is focused on mostly investing. We do Finance 101 too. We actually have personal development because it goes hand in hand, believe it or not, with investing. If you panic, if you don't believe in yourself and you can do it, you're never going to do anything. So might as well not spend money in a course, right? So we have that component as well. Mindset psychology, very important. But the main focus of Latino Wall Street is learning how to make your money grow, how to protect your money from inflation, investing your money, generating income with the goal of financial freedom, because I think everyone deserves it. And I really think if this education was everywhere in the whole world, in every school, we wouldn't have so many families going bankrupt like my family did. We wouldn't have so many people struggling financially because they would know what to do to, one, protect their money, and two, to make it grow.
Thank you, Gabby. Thank you, Selena. That was the end of our talk. I hate to cut it off like that, but I want to thank Melissa and Emerge Americas for having us here today. Thank you. Thank you so much.